The emergency council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered in the floating assembly above the capital world of Centaurus Prime. Chancellor Vorm of the Theshan people stood at the central podium, his 3 eyes dimmed with exhaustion and fear. 3 worlds, he said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into galactic common. 3 of our colonies have gone completely silent in the span of 2 standard months. The holographic display flickered to life above the assembly first, showing Thesha Prime, a gentle agricultural world where the Theshans grew their crystal grains under twin suns. The image showed vast fields of shimmering crops, dome cities that caught the light like soap bubbles, millions of peaceful farmers tending their lands. Then the display changed. The same world appeared again, but now the fields were black and dead. The domes had collapsed into twisted wreckage. Not a single light shone from the surface. The world looked like something had taken a bite out of it and chewed until nothing remained. We sent investigation teams. Vorm continued, his voice shaking. Only 1 ship returned, and barely functional the crew was. He paused, struggling with the memory. The crew was traumatized beyond our ability to treat them. They kept repeating the same phrase. They ate everything. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Galactic Coalition had existed for over 3,000 years, and in all that time, they had never faced a threat like this. Wars were ancient history, something their ancestors had moved beyond when they formed the Coalition. Most species had defense fleets that were more ceremonial and functional. Parade ships with shields and sensors, but few actual weapons. Ambassador Kelth of the Centauran High Council raised one of her 4 arms. What exactly did your investigation team find, Chancellor? The holographic display shifted again, this time showing grainy footage from a ship's external cameras. At first, the image seemed to show a cloud of debris in orbit around the dead world. Then the cloud moved with purpose, shifted direction, and began to take shape. They weren't debris. Millions of biomechanical entities swarmed through space like insects, each one roughly the size of a small shuttle. Their bodies appeared to be part organic tissue and part advanced machinery, pulsing with an eerie blue-green luminescence. As the assembly watched in horror, several of the creatures latched onto a derelict satellite and began to dismantle it, absorbing both the metal and circuitry into their bodies. We call them harvesters, Vorm said quietly, because that is what they do. They harvest everything. Organic matter, metals, technology, energy, nothing is left behind. They consume a world down to the bedrock and then move to the next. The display showed more footage. Harvesters flowing across a planet's surface like a living tide, stripping forests in seconds, dissolving buildings into their component atoms, dragging struggling animals into their mass where they simply cease to exist. How do we stop them? Someone asked from the upper tiers of the assembly. Vorm's 3 eyes blinked slowly. We don't know. Our defense fleet engaged them at the colony of Kepler 723 ships. Our best crews, weapons we haven't fired in actual combat for 1,000 years. And? Kelth pressed. All ships lost, Vorm said flatly. The harvesters adapted to our shield frequencies within minutes. They swarmed our vessels and pulled them apart. We received one final transmission from Commander Thel before his voice broke. Before his ship was consumed. They learned too fast. Nothing stops them. Please send. And then silence. The assembly erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions, demanded action, called for their home fleets to be recalled. Some of the more fragile species began making distress sounds, their translators struggling to convey their panic in common language. Chancellor Vorm raised his arms for silence. We've already sent a priority distress call to all coalition members. We need ships, weapons, scientific minds, anything that can help us understand and stop this threat before it consumes more worlds. How many worlds have we lost so far? asked a Venturian delegate, her crystalline body chiming with anxiety. 4 confirmed dead. Vorum replied. 7 more have reported strained readings in their outer systems. We believe the harvesters are surveying them, preparing for the next wave of attacks. Ambassador Kell stood, her imposing figure commanding attention. I move that we authorize full military mobilization. All member species must contribute their defense fleets to a unified force. Agreed, came voices from around the chamber. All in favor? Vorum called the vote was unanimous. Within hours, orders would go out across coalition space. Every species would send what military assets they possessed to form a grand fleet. It would be the largest gathering of armed vessels in 3 millennia as the assembly began to disperse. Discussing logistics and strategies they barely remembered from ancient texts. A junior aide approached Vorum with a data tablet. Chancellor, the aide said nervously. We've received a response to the distress call. Already? From whom? The humans, sir. Vorum felt his heart skip. Humanity, the newest members of the coalition, having joined only 50 standard years ago. They came from a world the survey teams had classified as a Death World Class 9, one of the most hostile environments ever discovered harboring intelligent life. The humans were strange. They bonded with predatory animals and kept them in their homes. They consumed substances that were poisonous to most species for pleasure. Their planet regularly tried to kill them with storms, earthquakes, temperature extremes, and meteor impacts. Yet, they thrived. They had sent delegates who smiled with their teeth, showing a threat display among most species, and seemed confused when others flinched. What did they say? Vorum asked carefully. The aide looked down at the tablet. The message is very brief. It says, received your distress call regarding harvester threat. Admiral Elena Vasquez en route to Centaurus Prime with preliminary response fleet. ETA 48 hours. Do not engage harvesters until human forces arrive. We'll handle it, Terra Command. We'll handle it? Vorum repeated, confused. They're sending 1 admiral and a preliminary fleet? Do they not understand the scale of this threat? The aide scrolled through more data. Sir, there's an attachment, a ship manifest. Vorum took the tablet and read. His 3 eyes widened as he scrolled through the list. 200 warships, ranging from frigate class to vessels the humans called dreadnoughts. 50,000 soldiers. Support craft. And something listed only as Ragnarok Protocol authorization approved. What is Ragnarok Protocol? Vorum wondered aloud. The aide shook his head. Unknown, sir. It's not in any database. Human military classifications are heavily redacted. Vorum looked up at the star field visible through the chamber's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, the harvesters were consuming another world, and somewhere else, the humans were coming. He wasn't sure which prospect frightened him more when humanity had joined the coalition. They had been asked to decommission their weapons as a sign of peaceful intent. They had agreed without argument, turning over massive stockpiles of what they called conventional arms to be destroyed. The coalition had been impressed by their compliance. Only now did Vorum wonder, if those were the weapons humanity considered conventional, what were they bringing now? Admiral Elena Vasquez would arrive in 2 days. Vorum hoped that would be soon enough, and he hoped even more that they hadn't made a terrible mistake by calling the Deathworlders for help outside the assembly. In the black of space, a single harvester scout drifted past the orbital defense platforms, absorbing their sensor data, learning their weaknesses. The swarm was patient. They had consumed 1,000 worlds before this one. They would consume 1,000 more. Admiral Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport shuttle onto the landing platform of Centaurus Prime's main diplomatic facility. She was tall for a human female, nearly 2 meters, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to calculate the tactical value of everything they Observed Chancellor Vorum waited at the edge of the platform with a delegation of coalition leaders. As Vasquez approached, he noticed several things that made his skin crawl. Her movements were precise and efficient, wasting no energy. Her uniform was flat black with no decorative elements, purely functional. And most disturbing, she had 3 scars across her left cheek that she made no attempt to hide among coalition species. Such marks would have been healed immediately. But humans seemed to wear their damage like badges of honor. Chancellor Vorum, Vasquez said, her voice carrying no warmth or pleasantries. I've reviewed your tactical data on the harvesters. We need to discuss the coalition's defense plan. Of course. Admiral, Vorum gestured toward the conference building. We've assembled our military leaders to coordinate with your forces. We have commitments from 32 species so far. With more fleets arriving daily, Vasquez stopped walking. Cancel those orders? I what? Send all coalition forces to defensive positions around your most populated worlds. Vasquez said flatly. Establish evacuation protocols and shelter procedures. Keep your ships close to home. Ambassador Kelf stepped forward, her forearms crossing in a gesture of confusion. Admiral, we call for aid. We intend to contribute our forces to a unified defense. No, Vasquez interrupted. Your ships aren't designed for this kind of engagement. They'll just get in the way and give the harvesters more material to consume. The coalition delegates exchanged troubled glances. Kelf's crystalline skin flushed with agitation. Admiral, with respect. The combined coalition fleet numbers over 3,000 vessels. Surely our strength in numbers. We'll get 3,000 crews killed, Vasquez finished. I've seen your ship specifications. Beautiful designs, elegant energy systems, but they're built for exploration and ceremony, not combat. Your fastest vessels can't match our slowest attack craft. Your strongest shields were designed to deflect radiation and micrometeors. Not sustained weapons fire, but we have weapons, a Venturian representative insisted. Energy projectors. Missile systems. When was the last time any coalition species fired those weapons at a living target? Vasquez's silence fell over the group. That's what I thought. Vasquez continued. Meanwhile, humanity has been in a state of conflict somewhere in our territory for our entire recorded history. We know war, we're good at it, and that should terrify you. Vorum felt his 3 eyes blink rapidly. A sign of deep stress among his people. Admiral, we appreciate your confidence. But the harvesters have already destroyed 4 worlds, and 23 of our best ships. Surely you don't intend to face them alone? That's exactly what I intend, Vasquez replied. Give me complete tactical data on every harvester encounter. Star charts for affected systems. And current intelligence on their movement patterns. Everything else. We'll handle ourselves. But your fleet, Vorum stammered. Even 200 ships against millions of harvesters is better odds than you think, Vasquez said. Then her expression softened slightly. Chancellor, I understand your concern. You've called for help, and now I'm telling you to stand aside. This must seem arrogant or reckless. It does, Kelf said bluntly. Vasquez nodded. Then let me explain something about humans. My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. We survived supervolcanic eruptions that blocked out our sun. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived meteor impacts and magnetic pole reversals and atmospheric collapse. And through all of that, we were fighting each other. She pulled up a holographic display from her wrist computer, showing images of Earth. Massive storms that could swallow cities, earthquakes that split continents, predators with teeth the size of knives. This is a Category 5 hurricane, Vasquez explained, pointing to a swirling mass of clouds, winds that can strip flesh from bone. Storm surge that drowns coastlines. Humans built cities in hurricane zones anyway. This is a cassowary, a flightless bird that can disembowel a human with one kick. We kept them in parks for children to observe. This is the Amazon rainforest. Every plant is either poisonous or covered in thorns. Every animal is venomous or predatory. The air itself is thick enough to choke you. Humans lived there for 10,000 years and called it home. The coalition delegates stared at the images with growing horror. My point, Vasquez continued, is that humans don't just survive hostile environments, we excel in them. We don't just coexist with predators, we made them into pets. We don't just endure disasters, we build our civilizations in disaster zones because the land is cheaper. Your species evolved in gentle places where survival was a given. Humanity evolved in a place where survival was an achievement. But what does this have to do with the harvesters? Vorum asked. Everything, Vasquez said sharply. You see the harvesters as an overwhelming force, an existential threat. We see them as a pest control problem. You're asking yourselves how to survive them. We're asking ourselves the most efficient way to exterminate them. The word exterminate hung in the air like a Bladical's voice shook slightly. Admiral, these creatures have consumed 4 worlds in 2 months. They adapt to our weapons within minutes. They outnumber us millions to 1. You speak of extermination as if it's a simple matter. It is, Vasquez said calmly. Difficult, costly, brutal, yes, but simple in concept. Humanity has driven hundreds of species to extinction on our own world, some by accident, many on purpose. We know how to kill something until nothing remains. We've had practice. She pulled up another image, a massive human warship, angular and aggressive, bristling with weapons. This is the UESC Thermopylae, one of our dreadnought-class vessels. It carries enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. It has armor made from materials we don't even let the Coalition scan. And it runs on a reactor that most species banned as too dangerous to operate. We have 47 of these ships in my fleet. And the others? Vorum asked weakly. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates. Support craft, all designed with one purpose: to engage and destroy threats to human territory or human allies. Vasquez paused. When humanity joined the Coalition 50 years ago, you asked us to decommission our weapons. We agreed. We turned over thousands of nuclear warheads, biological weapons, chemical agents, kinetic impactors, and various other tools of mass destruction. You were pleased with our compliance. Yes, Kelf said slowly. It was seen as a sign of your commitment to peace. Vasquez smiled without humor. Those were our old weapons, obsolete technology from our early space age. We gave you the weapons we were throwing away anyway. What we kept, what we've been building for the last 50 years while under Coalition membership. That's what's coming to meet the harvesters. She tapped her wrist computer again. A new manifest appeared, showing troop deployments, weapon specifications, tactical formations, and one line that made Vorm's blood run cold. Ragnarok Protocol. Authorized for use if primary engagement fails. What is Ragnarok Protocol? He asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Vasquez met his eyes. Every human vessel carries a self-destruct mechanism powerful enough to destroy everything within 50,000 kilometers. If we determine that victory is impossible, if the harvesters prove too strong to defeat through conventional means, every ship in my fleet will detonate simultaneously, creating an antimatter cascade that will sterilize this entire sector of space. You would kill yourselves? Kelth whispered, horrified. We would take the harvesters with us, Vasquez corrected, and save the Coalition from a slower death. Mutually assured destruction has been a core human military doctrine for over 500 years. If we can't win, we make sure the enemy doesn't either. Vorm felt dizzy. They had called for help, sent out a desperate plea for salvation, and what had answered was something that viewed suicide attacks as standard operating procedure. So you see, Vasquez continued, her voice softening again. "This is why I need you to keep your fleets at home. Not because we don't value your help, but because you're not ready for the kind of war we're about to fight. Humans don't have rules of engagement like you. We have one rule: win whatever the cost. And if you lose?" Vorm asked quietly. "We won't," Vasquez said with absolute certainty, "because humans are very good at one thing. Killing things that threaten us. We've been perfecting that skill since we lived in caves and threw rocks at predators. The harvesters are just another predator. And we've never let a predator hunt us without hunting it back to extinction." She turned to leave, then paused. "My fleet will arrive in full within 20 hours. Keep your people calm and your ships defensive. We'll handle the harvesters and Chancellor." "Yes, Admiral." "Don't send another distress call unless you're ready for humans to answer the way we always do, with overwhelming, uncompromising violence." Vasquez left the platform. Her boots echoing on the metal deck, the coalition leaders stood in stunned silence. Finally, Kelf spoke, her voice barely audible. "What have we summoned?" Observer Talth of the Centaurian Science Council floated in the zero-gravity observation deck of the human vessel UES C. Thermopylae, watching through reinforced viewports as the human fleet assembled in formation. His species had evolved in the gentle tidal pools of Centaurus Prime, where the greatest danger was an occasional aggressive mollusk. Now he found himself aboard a warship designed by apex predators, and everything about it made his biology scream warnings. The ship's interior was all harsh angles and exposed conduits. Where coalition vessels were designed for comfort and aesthetics, human ships were designed for redundancy and survival. Every system had backups. Every corridor could be sealed independently. Every section could function, even if severed from the main hull. Observer Talth. A voice said from behind him. He turned to see Captain James Chun, the Thermopylae's commanding officer. A compact human male with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. "Captain," Talth said through his translator, "your fleet is impressive. I confess I did not expect such precise coordination." Chun smiled slightly. "We've had practice." Observer, you're here to document human military doctrine for the Coalition Council, correct? That is my assignment, yes. Then I need you to understand something before we engage the harvesters. Chun's expression became serious. What you're about to witness will be disturbing. Humans fight differently than coalition species. We don't seek to minimize casualties or preserve resources. We seek total victory, whatever the cost. Talth felt his internal organs shift uncomfortably. Admiral Vasquez mentioned this. She spoke of extermination. She was being accurate. Chun confirmed. The harvesters have consumed 4 worlds and killed millions of coalition citizens. In human military terminology, that makes them an existential threat. And humanity has one response to existential threats: complete annihilation of the enemy. But surely negotiation. Containment, deterrence. The harvesters don't negotiate. They can't be contained. They adapt too quickly. And they clearly aren't deterred by conventional defenses. Chun gestured toward the viewport where 3 harvester-occupied worlds glowed on the tactical display. So we're gonna kill them. All of them. Every single harvester in this sector of space. The human fleet had positioned itself in 3 groups, each targeting one of the consumed worlds. Talth watched as countdown timers appeared on the tactical screens. What is about to happen? He asked nervously. Scorched Earth, Chen said flatly. A human tactical doctrine dating back thousands of years. If you can't take territory intact, you destroy it utterly so the enemy gains no advantage from holding it. But those are entire planets that are already dead. Chun interrupted. The harvesters stripped them of all life. What remains is biomechanical infrastructure and harvester nests. We're going to sterilize those worlds, eliminate every trace of harvester presence. The countdown reached 0, What Talth witnessed in the next 17 minutes would haunt him for the rest of his life. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously across all 3 target zones. But these weren't precision strikes or tactical bombardments. This was systematic. Obliteration orbital railguns launched tungsten rods at relativistic speeds, each impact releasing more energy than a nuclear weapon. The rods punched through planetary crusts and detonated deep underground, triggering artificial earthquakes that shattered harvester nest structures. Atmospheric incendiaries followed, chemical weapons that ignited the air itself, creating firestorms that reached temperatures hot enough to melt rock. The flames consumed everything organic, turning harvester biomatter into ash. Then came the biological weapons engineered viruses designed specifically to attack harvester cellular structures. Talth watched in horror as harvester swarms in orbit began to convulse and die, their biomechanical systems failing as the virus ate through their organic components. Talth couldn't find words in his language or in galactic common genocide. Chun finished calmly. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Humanity has committed genocide before, against our own subspecies, against animals on our world, against anything we deemed a threat. We're not proud of it, but we're very good at it. The 3 worlds burned. Harvester vessels that tried to escape were hunted down by human fighter craft and destroyed. Those that tried to fight back were met with overwhelming firepower. Those that tried to adapt found that humans had anticipated every possible adaptation and had countermeasures ready within 2 hours. 3 worlds had been rendered completely sterile. No life, no harvester presence. Nothing but radioactive cinders orbiting their sunstone. Felt sick. How can you be so calm about this? Chen's expression darkened. Because I've done worse, observer. During the Martian Rebellion, I commanded a strike force that bombarded civilian population centers. I watched 18,000 human colonists die because they followed a charismatic leader who wanted independence. I gave the order that killed them. That was humans fighting humans. You think I'll lose sleep over killing something that eats entire species? Before Talth could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. Contact. The tactical officer shouted. Harvester swarm inbound massive formation. Estimate 200,000 units. Chun moved to his command chair. All hands battle stations. Activate combat protocols. The harvester swarm appeared on the displays like a dark cloud, blotting out the stars. They moved with terrifying coordination, surrounding the human fleet from multiple vector stealth. Watched as the number on the tactical screen kept climbing. 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 harvesters. Captain, the tactical officer said. Her voice strained. They're trying to box us in. If they complete the encirclement, let them, Chun said coldly. Prepare Ragnarok Protocol. Authorization Chun Alpha 7 Omega. Talth felt his biology freeze. You can't. There are 13,000 humans aboard these ships. And if we let this swarm reach coalition space, millions more will die, Chun replied. Observer, understand something about human military psychology. We are prepared to die, every single one of us, if it means protecting those under our care. Death in service is considered honorable. Survival after failure is not. The harvesters closed in, their numbers now exceeding 800,000. The human fleet was completely surrounded, a tiny cluster of ships in a sea of hostile contacts. All vessels. Admiral Vasquez's voice came across the fleet-wide channel. Ragnarok Protocol is authorized. If we cannot break through in the next 15 minutes, all ships will initiate self-destruct sequence. It has been an honor serving with you. Terra stands. Terra stands, echoed across every human ship. Talth couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're actually going to kill yourselves, all of you, if necessary. Chun confirmed, but Observer watched carefully. Because humans don't go down easily, the human fleet suddenly broke formation, each ship selecting a different vector and accelerating at speeds that would have torn coalition vessels apart. They weren't trying to escape. They were charging directly into the Harvester swarm plasma cannons, fired at maximum output, carving lanes of destruction through Harvester formations. Magnetic accelerators launched munitions at such velocity that the projectiles simply vaporized anything they struck. And then came the nuclear weapons. Tactical nuclear devices detonated in carefully calculated patterns, each explosion destroying thousands of harvesters, while creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted harvester coordination. The thermopylae shook violently as harvesters latched onto the hull. Chun ordered, hull sections 7 through 12 explosive decompression. Vent everything. Massive sections of the ship's outer hull blew outward, taking hundreds of harvesters with them into space. The ship's internal atmosphere screamed out through the breaches, but automated systems sealed the inner bulkheads within seconds. Hull integrity at 60%. The damage control officer reported acceptable, Chun said. Continue firing. 3 human ships, destroyers on the fleet's left flank, found themselves overwhelmed by harvesters. Their hulls breached, their systems failing. This is Captain Morrison of the UESC Defiant. A voice came across the channel, distorted by static. We're not making it out. Ragnarok protocol activated. Tell our families we stood between Earth and the dark. Talth watched in horror as the 3 ships' reactors went critical. The antimatter containment fields collapsed in a controlled manner, releasing their fury all at once. The explosions were beyond description. 3 miniature supernovas erupting in the middle of the harvester swarm. Everything within 50,000 kilometers of each ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized in temperatures that matched the hearts of stars when the radiation cleared. 89 harvester vessels were gone, along with the 3 human ships and their crews. 4,000 humans dead. The fleet channel was silent for 3 seconds. Then Admiral Vasquez's voice returned, calm and cold. All ships, advance through the gap. Morrison's sacrifice will not be wasted. Make them pay for every meter. The remaining human fleet surged forward through the opening created by their fallen comrades. They didn't mourn, didn't hesitate, didn't question. They simply killed everything in their path with mechanical efficiency. Within 30 minutes, the harvester swarm was broken. Survivors fled in all directions, and human fighters pursued them relentlessly. Observer Talth had filed 17 reports over the past 3 weeks, each more disturbing than the last. The human military employed tactics that the Coalition had banned centuries ago, not for being ineffective, but for being too cruel, too absolute. Today's observation would surpass all previous horrors. The human fleet had captured a harvester scout ship intact to feat the Coalition had deemed impossible, and what followed made Talth wish he had never accepted this assignment. Begin. Interrogation protocol. Admiral Vasquez order read. Talth watched through the observation window as human technicians worked on the captured harvester. They weren't trying to communicate. They were systematically dismantling it while keeping its organic components alive. This is torture, Talth said to Vasquez, his translator barely able to convey his revulsion. This is intelligence gathering, Vasquez replied without emotion. The harvester has consumed thousands of sentient beings. I have no moral qualms about causing it discomfort. To save millions more, the harvester's biomechanical body spasmed as human technicians severed neural connections one by one, recording how the creature's remaining systems compensated. They isolated its communication organs and forced it to emit distress signals, then analyzed the response from distant harvester swarms after 6 hours. The humans had extracted everything they needed. Destroy it, Vasquez ordered, and a technician incinerated the harvester without ceremony. You're monsters, Talth whispered. Yes, Vasquez agreed. but we're the monsters fighting on your side. You might want to remember that distinction. The intelligence. Gathered from torturing 17 captured, Harvester's Talth had stopped watching after the third revealed something critical. The swarms were coordinated by a central intelligence, what humans called the Prime Nexus. The Nexus was located in deep space between star systems, a massive bioship the size of a small moon. It directed all Harvester operations across the sector, processed their collective intelligence, and spawned new swarms. We're going to kill it. Vasquez announced to the Coalition Council during an emergency transmission. Chancellor Vorm's 3 eyes blinked rapidly. Admiral, our calculations suggest the Nexus is protected by 3.7 million Harvester units. Even your fleet cannot win through conventional assault. Vasquez finished, which is why we're not going to fight them. We're going to go through them. That's suicide, Ambassador Kelth protested. No, Vasquez corrected. Suicide implies death without purpose. This is a calculated risk with acceptable casualties. Human military history is built on charges into overwhelming odds. Thermopylae, the Alamo, the siege of Tannhauser Station. We lose the battle but achieve the objective. What objective is worth sacrificing your entire fleet? Vorm asked desperately. Killing the Nexus, Vasquez said simply. Cut off the head and the body. Dies. Destroy the Nexus, and every Harvester swarm in this sector becomes uncoordinated. Vulnerable, ultimately self-destructive. You save not just 4 worlds, but potentially hundreds. The Coalition Council voted to forbid the assault. It was unanimous except for humanity's single vote. Vasquez listened to the vote, then said, Noted. Humanity will proceed regardless. Earth recognizes coalition authority in peacetime. This is not peacetime. She cut the transmission 20 hours later. The human fleet jumped into the Nexus system. Talth watched from the Thermopylae as the tactical display populated with hostile contacts. There were so many Harvesters that the display struggled to render them individually, eventually showing them as a probability cloud of red. Dear gods. Talth breathed. Gods won't help us here, Captain Chun said grimly, but superior human spite might. Observer, you asked me once why humans fight with such intensity. This is why. Because when we commit to something, we see it through to the end. Whatever the cost, the human fleet broadcast on all frequencies. Instead of military communications, they played recordings from Earth. Nature documentaries showing apex predators hunting prey, footage of natural disasters, historical battles, nuclear detonations, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and over it all, Admiral Vasquez's voice. This is what made us. This is what forged humanity. This is why you chose the wrong species to consume. You picked a fight with the only species that turns conflict into culture. War into art, and genocide into Tuesday. You wanted to harvest? Come harvest, Deathworlders? The Harvester swarm responded with rage, surging toward the human fleet in a tide of biomechanical fury. All ships, Vasquez ordered. Formation Delta 9. Spearhead configuration. We're not stopping for anything. The human fleet didn't spread out or use tactical positioning. They formed a wedge, pointed directly at the Nexus, and accelerated to maximum combat speed. The first wave of Harvesters crashed against the fleet's forward shields. Human ships shuddered but held course. Point defense systems fired continuously, creating a web of destruction around each vessel. But it wasn't enough. The Harvesters kept coming. Hull breaches on decks 9 through 15. Damage control reported on the Thermopylae. Seal those sections and vent atmosphere. Chun ordered. Do not slow down. Talth watched as entire sections of the ship were sacrificed, blown out into space, along with any crew members who hadn't reached safety in time. The tactical display showed human casualties mounting. 50 dead, 100. Stop watching the casualty count, Chun said to Talth. Watch the distance to target instead. The Nexus loomed ahead, a grotesque mass of organic tissue and crystalline technology. It pulsed with eerie light, and Talf could see smaller harvesters being birthed from its surface, adding to the swarm. Even as the humans fought through, 3 more human ships were overwhelmed, their hulls torn apart. But instead of activating Ragnarok Protocol, their crews ejected in escape pods that were heading directly toward the Nexus at high velocity. What are they? Talf began. The first pod reached the Nexus's outer membrane and detonated. Then the second and third. Each escape pod was a disguised missile, piloted by crew members who chose to become weapons rather than retreat. Acceptable sacrifice, Chen muttered, watching as the pods carved holes in the Nexus's defenses. The human fleet was now halfway through the harvester swarm. Ships were bleeding atmosphere, trailing debris, listing from asymmetric damage, but they kept moving forward. Admiral Vasquez's voice came across all channels. Boarding teams, prepare for insertion. We're going in. Boarding teams? Talf repeated in shock. You're sending soldiers into that thing? Standard human doctrine, Chun replied. When you can't destroy something from the outside, you go inside and kill it from within. The fleet closed to within weapons range of the Nexus itself. Massive particle beams lanced out from human dreadnoughts, burning holes in the bioship's hull. And through those holes, boarding craft launched small, fast ships carrying human Marinestoth accessed the helmet camera feeds from the boarding teams. What he saw would require years of therapy to process. The Marines breached the Nexus's interior and found themselves in a nightmare landscape of organic corridors, pulsing with bioluminescence. Harvesters swarmed to intercept them, and the fighting became medieval in its brutality. Human soldiers used weapons that most species had banned, chemical accelerant firearms that tore through flesh, edged weapons that could cut through biomechanical armor, explosive charges that reduced harvesters to component molecules. One Marine Sergeant Maria Kowalski, according to her ID tag, lost her right arm when a harvester severed it with a blade-like appendage. Her helmet cam showed her calmly picking up her severed arm, using it to bludgeon 2 more harvesters to death, then continuing forward with only her left arm functional. Medical to Kowalski. Command called. Negative, Kowalski replied, her voice steady despite massive blood loss. Mission first. I can die after the objective is secured. She kept fighting for another 17 minutes before blood loss finally dropped her. By then, she had killed 43 harvesters and secured a critical junction point for her team. The Marines pushed deeper into the Nexus, following Admiral Vasquez, who led from the front a concept that baffled coalition military doctrine where commanders, directed from safe position stealth, watched through multiple camera feeds as Vasquez fought through harvester defenders with brutal efficiency. She carried weapons in both hands, fired without pausing, moved through the organic corridors like she was born for this. All teams, converge on the core, Vasquez ordered. We end this now. The human teams reached the Nexus's central chamber, a vast space where the prime intelligence resided. A massive brain-like structure that pulsed with processing power. Vasquez approached it, studied it for 30 seconds, then turned to her demolitions expert. Wire it for total destruction, she ordered. Admiral. A voice came through the comms. It was the Nexus itself, speaking through jury-rigged translators. We can negotiate. We can coexist. We can. You had your chance for coexistence before you consumed 4 coalition worlds, Vasquez interrupted. Humanity doesn't negotiate with existential threats. We eliminate them, but we are sentient. The Nexus pleaded. We have intelligence, self-awareness, the capacity for reason. So do the millions of beings you've killed, Vasquez said coldly. You chose consumption over cooperation. You chose expansion over coexistence. These are not mistakes. These are choices, and choices have consequences. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council convened 3 weeks after the Nexus's destruction. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered. But the atmosphere was different. Now, there was fear mixed with the relief. Suspicion alongside gratitude. Chancellor Vorum stood at the central podium. His 3 eyes focused on Admiral Elena Vasquez, who sat in the human delegation section with the same cold composure she had maintained throughout the entire crisis. Admiral Vasquez, Vorum began carefully. The Coalition wishes to formally acknowledge humanity's decisive action against the Harvester threat. Your species sacrificed 47 vessels and over 15,000 personnel to eliminate an existential danger to our civilization. Polite applause rippled through the chamber. But it was muted, uncertain. However, Vorum continued, and the chamber fell silent. Your methods have raised significant concerns among the Coalition's member species. We must address the use of prohibited weapons, the interrogation of captured harvesters, and the general conduct of human military forces. Admiral Vasquez stood, her uniform bearing no decorations despite her victory. Humans, Observer Talth had learned, didn't celebrate war. They simply acknowledged it. What specifically concerns the Council? Vasquez asked, her voice neutral. Ambassador Kelth rose, her crystalline form chiming with agitation. Everything, Admiral. You deployed biological weapons banned by the Coalition Charter for 3,000 years. You tortured sentient beings for information. You sacrificed your own personnel without hesitation. You ignored direct orders from this Council. She paused, searching for words. You fought like monsters. We fought like soldiers, Vasquez corrected. And we won. The Harvesters are extinct, their nexus destroyed, and Coalition space is secure. Isn't that what you wanted when you sent the distress call? We wanted salvation, Vorum said quietly. Not annihilation. There's a difference, is there? Vasquez challenged. The Harvesters consumed 4 worlds and killed millions. They were spreading, adapting, becoming more dangerous with each encounter. Containment was impossible, negotiation was futile, and conventional warfare was failing. What solution did you expect besides annihilation? A Venturian delegate stood, his crystalline voice trembling. We expected humanity to follow Coalition protocols, to respect the rules of engagement that have governed peacetime operations. Vasquez interrupted. Your protocols work fine when facing hypothetical threats and ceremonial conflicts. They don't work against something that wants to consume your entire species. Humanity learned this lesson the hard way over thousands of years of actual warfare. But the methods, Kelth protested, were effective, Vasquez stated flatly. Every action we took was calculated to maximize lethality against the Harvesters while minimizing Coalition casualties. Yes, we used biological weapons against a biological threat. Yes, we interrogated captives to save millions of lives. Yes, we sacrificed our own because that's what soldiers do. And yes, we ignored your orders because your orders would have resulted in total Coalition defeat. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded humanity be expelled from the Coalition. Others called for restrictions on human military capability. A few simply sat in stunned silence or raised his arms for quiet. Admiral, this council proposes the following. Humanity will decommission all vessels used in the Harvester campaign. You will submit to weapons inspections. You will agree to Coalition oversight of all future military operations. And you will formally apologize for exceeding your authority during this crisis. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Then, she smiled not with warmth, but with something cold and dangerous. No, she said simply. The chamber fell silent. No? Vorum repeated, as if he hadn't heard correctly. Humanity declines your proposal, Vasquez clarified. We will not decommission our ships. We will not submit to weapons inspections. We will not accept oversight. And we absolutely will not apologize for saving your civilization. You cannot simply refuse, Kelf began. We can. And we are, Vasquez interrupted. The coalition is a voluntary alliance. Humanity joined willingly and can depart the same way. If you want to expel us for winning a war you couldn't fight, that's your choice. But understand what you're choosing. Are you threatening us? A delegate demanded. I'm stating facts, Vasquez replied. Right now, humanity is the only coalition species with functional military capability. You've seen what the harvesters could do. Imagine what other threats might exist beyond known space. Imagine facing something worse without human protection. Protection? Vorum's voice rose. You speak as if we need you, as if we're dependent on human violence. You are, Vasquez said bluntly. 3 weeks ago, you sent a desperate distress call because your entire civilization was on the brink of extinction. Humanity answered that call and eliminated the threat. Now you want to punish us for being effective. This is why most species don't survive contact with real predators. You've forgotten that the universe is hostile, and that survival sometimes requires becoming more hostile than your enemies. She moved to the center of the chamber, addressing all delegates. Let me be clear about humanity's position. We will remain in the coalition as equal members. We will maintain our military forces at current strength. We will continue to develop new defensive technologies. And we will respond to threats against coalition space with whatever force we deem necessary. If any species finds this unacceptable, you're welcome to file complaints, but you'll file them from behind human defensive lines. This is unacceptable, Kelf stammered. Then leave the coalition, Vasquez suggested. Return to your home systems, manage your own defense. Face the next existential threat alone. See how well your ceremonial fleets and 3,000-year-old peace accords serve you when something hungry comes calling. The silence was absolute finally. Observer Talth stood a junior member with no real authority, but his reports had made him something of an expert on human behavior. Chancellor, if I may speak? Vorum nodded tiredly. I have spent 3 weeks observing human military operations. Talth began, his voice shaking. I have witnessed things that violated every ethical standard I was raised to uphold. I watched humans torture captives, sacrifice their own soldiers, destroy entire worlds, and kill without hesitation or remorse. Vasquez watched him with those cold, calculating eyes, but Talth continued. I also watched them stand between the coalition and annihilation. I watched them charge into odds that should have been impossible. I watched them die so that we could live. And I realized something. We call them monsters, but monsters are exactly what we needed. He turned to the assembled delegates. The Admiral is right. We've forgotten what survival costs. We've lived in peace for so long that we've lost the ability to recognize when peace is impossible. The harvesters didn't want negotiation or coexistence. They wanted consumption, and only humanity remembered how to respond to that kind of threat. So, what do you suggest? Vorum asked. We accept humanity's terms. Talth said firmly. We acknowledge that our survival depends on their protection. We learn from them. And most importantly, we never send another distress call unless we're prepared for them to answer exactly as they did this time, with overwhelming, uncompromising absolute force. The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous. 17 species voted to expel humanity. 12 abstained, but the majority voted to accept human terms. Vasquez nodded once, satisfied, and returned to her seat. The session adjourned. But as delegates filed out, Vorum approached Vasquez privately. Admiral, I need to inform you of something. Our deep space monitoring stations detected an anomaly 2 days ago. Vasquez's expression sharpened. What kind of anomaly? Vorum pulled up a holographic display showing sensor data. Energy signatures consistent with Harvester biotechnology, but different, more advanced. Our analysts believe, he paused, reluctant to continue, say it. Vasquez ordered. We believe the Harvesters we fought were only a scouting force, Vorum said quietly. The main swarm is still out there, in dark space between galaxies. Based on the signal strength, they're massive billions of units, perhaps trillions. When will they arrive? 50 years, maybe less. Vasquez was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Then she smiled, and this time there was something genuine in it. Something almost eager. Good, she said. 50 years gives us time to prepare. We'll build more ships, develop better weapons, train more soldiers. And when they arrive, they'll find out what happens when you give humanity a deadline and a clear target. You're looking forward to it. Vorum realized with horror. Not forward, Vasquez corrected. But we're not afraid either. Humanity has spent its entire existence fighting things that wanted to kill us predators. Disease, each other, nature itself. This is just another threat. Larger in scale but similar in principle. You kill it before it kills you. She turned to leave, then paused. Chancellor, I need you to understand something. When that main swarm arrives, the methods we used against the scouts will seem gentle by comparison. Humanity has weapons we didn't deploy this time planet killers. Stellar engineering tools, things we developed during our darker periods. If the real threat is as large as you say, we'll use everything. And I mean everything.